'Tis the season for chicken fingers at Raising Cane's. Warm up with hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers, crispy crinkle-cut fries, garlicky buttered Texas toast, and the real source of holiday magic, cane sauce. And while you're treating yourself, don't forget to treat everyone on your list to Cane's gift cards and New York City-inspired plush puppies that benefit pet organizations. Happy holidays from Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. One love.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Billy Dees Podcast. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked out our program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, including over at our good friends at Good Pods. So if you haven't had a chance yet, great place for independent creators. That's Good Pods. You can find them right in the App Store. On the studio line with me right now, there she is, Emme Fox. It looks like Emmy, but she pronounces it Emme Fox. How are you doing today, Em?
I'm great, Billy. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's great to have you here. Just to let the audience know, this isn't going to be a conversation where there's going to be a lot of explicit talk just for the sake of being entertaining. This isn't like that. We are going to have a very, hopefully, heartfelt conversation about sexuality, body imagery, and all these other things for the audience. But in that process, we might very well discuss some certain aspects of human sexuality. So if that's going to be a trigger point for you, we just wanted to let you know that up front. Going by Em's bio on her Twitter account, she has that she is an intuitive guide and advocate of love, sexuality, and intimacy. And she has on her Twitter account, your sexuality is your power, embody it. That's your little Twitter bio there. So before we get into some of that, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, and just what is your place in the world?
My place in the world, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, I live in Vancouver, beautiful British Columbia in Canada. Very beautiful part of the world. I really enjoy it here. It's surrounded by nature and the ocean, which is something that I need.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate to live here.
I noticed some pictures. You appeared to be on a beach. Were those pictures taken recently, or is it just the weather? Did you brave cold weather, or what exactly happened?
Yeah, so that's our local nude beach that I adore. It's the best beach here in Vancouver, and I frequent that beach in the summertime every moment that I can. And yes, I went it was last weekend for a cold dip. It was a beautiful sunny day. It was kind of warmish outside. Yeah. And I went and spent some naked time in the ocean and in the sunshine. So it was really nice. Really enjoyed it.
Cool. In your younger days, maturing and all these other things, did you always have a certain awareness about your sexuality, or was this something that as you matured, you became more in tune with?
I think naturally all children are connected to their sexuality, and by sexuality, I don't necessarily mean the act of sex. Sexuality is the energy that creates life. and that creates the whole universe. And so when I talk about sexuality, I'm in essence speaking of that specific energy. And yes, when I was younger, I think I was very much in tune with that. And however, I was raised in a very strict Catholic upbringing where sexuality was not something that was accepted, mm-hmm. especially as a girl growing up with 3 brothers. I had a very strict upbringing in that regard. So, I wasn't allowed to like boys and dating and that sort of thing. So it was ended up kind of dampening that part of me for quite a few years, actually.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I often hear that in relation to the church, and not picking on Catholics, but this is something that comes up quite often in relation to religion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that religion at times can be suppressive in terms of how we develop with our sexuality?
Yes, I think so for sure. And, and that is a very, very long history, which is what I call the dominator programming, or what some call the patriarchy. And when the religions came into play, unfortunately, they wanted to control people. And so they started to control that aspect, especially for women, because women naturally carry that beautiful sexual energy, that creative energy. And so that can be scary because it is a powerful energy, right? When we're talking about an energy that creates life, it's not, it's big energy. And so I think it was created, religion was in order to maintain some order, mm-hmm. that was put into place.
Interesting. You mentioned the patriarchal society, and I've run across some of your posts where you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. How big of an issue in terms of the patriarchal society do you feel is in society, especially as it relates to how we evaluate sex? And I'm going to follow that up with a question too, but mm-hmm. Here's where I'm going with this. For example, a lot of women talk about the dad bods and how great the dad bods are. The guys mm-hmm. with the beard and the fat stomach, but you very seldom will have a quote unquote mom bod being showcased mm-hmm. as an ideal. Okay. Mm-hmm. We hide the stretch marks and all this. We don't want to see that. So in terms mm-hmm. of body imagery, in terms of how our behavior, there's the stud versus the slut. There's these two things mm-hmm. that are always in place in terms of how we evaluate sexual behavior. How big of a problem do you think that is? Has it gotten better or has it gotten worse over the last number of years?
I think there's definitely more and more awareness happening. There's a lot of people out in our society that's doing this work around unwinding patriarchal programming. And we're all swimming in it. I think a lot of times when we hear patriarchy, we equate that to men, right? Men mm-hmm. being bad. And I want to start and say that men are not bad, okay. right? That it's just a system that's been in place by certain people a long time ago. And it's in our DNA, right? It's a really long history. And I think that it's going to take some time to unwind and create something new. However, I'm really hopeful. I think it's happening already, and we're all swimming in these waters, right? Where patriarchy not only affects women, but it also affects men and children.
Sure,
it affects all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have to say, when you talk about the suppression of sex in religion, it hasn't done men any favors either. I mean, men are oftentimes in their adolescence, they're at the height of their sexual drive, and they're told they can't do anything about it. Even masturbation is something you can't do.
Right.
And I can't and if you do, you're a sinner and you're something terrible. I just can't believe that did men a whole lot of good either. Would you agree on that?
No. And men also have a right to this beautiful force. They also have that coursing through their body. And it's a shame that there's quite a few men actually who will message me looking for advice, or even some asking for permission to like the things that they like and to desire the things that they want. And yes, and they're definitely affected by that, by the patriarchy in regards to their sexuality, for sure.
Interesting. You mentioned, that when we're talking about sex, we're not necessarily talking about identifying in any particular way, but our desire for some sort of pleasure, whatever that may be, whether it's commonly referred to as straight or heterosexual or homosexual or whatever the case may be. That drive isn't always just about the sex, but it's about what you were talking about, and awareness and energy. Is that something that you feel? I've heard people talk about that, and they have something in common. I will follow up with that in a minute. I'm going to hold that one back. But in regard to that energy that we have, is that something that needs to be explored more? Is it too much about the physical?
It's not too much about the physical. It's actually, we're not embodying it enough.
Okay. We're
not allowing ourselves to embody this energy. So the majority of us are spending our time in our head, right? If we look at the way the world is run, we're talking about, what do we would like the hustle. We need to be busy all the time. We need to achieve and have competition and all of these things. And unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to anchor yourself in your body and to sit with that and go, is this actually right for me? Is this what I want? How does this feel in my body when I'm offered this job, or someone wants to talk to me or asks me to go somewhere? Do we actually take the time to pause and check in with our physical body? Because the physical body is very wise. It has a lot of knowledge, and not the brain knowledge, but physical knowledge that's attached to that sexuality, that energy, which is nature. Right. So I think we're not embodying it enough. We're hiding it. We're ashamed of it. We feel guilty when we want pleasure, when we simply want to take a day off and not go to work and simply read a book or spend some time in nature or be with our family. Yeah.
The one thing that I have noticed with people like yourself, women who, in particular women, that have this awareness of their body, the awareness of their sexuality. When you do something as simple as shake their hand, there is a sensitivity there a lot of times that you don't have from other people. They're just very much in tune to the touch. And what they seem to have in common besides that is they have a fondness for nature. They enjoy the walks, the streams in the forest, and all of these other things. And you've kind of touched on that those are very much intertwined. Do you want to expand on a little bit on how that works?
Well, yes. For me, it's very obvious is that the human being is the most domesticated animal on the planet. We are so disconnected from nature.
Yes.
We live in concrete buildings. We don't take time to go to nature. We don't take time to sit in stillness and to listen. We forget that we are part of nature. We are not above nature. We're not better than nature. If we look at the way we're behaving, we're constantly trying to manipulate nature and take from her to our benefit, as opposed to being with nature. If we look at indigenous cultures, they know this, they understand this.
Yes.
Right. So
Absolutely.
we, as a modern people, modern man, and with technology as wonderful as it may be, because we're here together because of it, it does disconnect us from nature. And nature is filled with that sexual energy, that sexuality that we're talking about. It's what gives vibrancy. It's what creates the beautiful colors in the plants and the animals. It's what guides them.
Yes.
And so we are disconnected from that.
Yes. There's an odd dichotomy, I believe, in our society that we both celebrate and suppress sexuality. For example, in advertising and all these things, there's, the old adage that sex sells. I'm not exactly sure. That's a marketing topic. I'll save it for another day. But obviously, a scantily clad, beautiful person in an ad is designed to raise your sexual desires. And then we turn around in the next minute and we're told that we're objectifying, we're, doing things that are dirty by religious standards. Those are dirty feelings. So we have both of these forces pulling on us at the same time. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? How has that adversely affected the way people behave?
Well, because you're getting two different messages, right? And I first want to say something. You made a comment that we use a sexual as to celebrate. I don't think that capitalism uses our sexuality to celebrate. They use sexuality to gain something.
Yes, that's why I said to sell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. It's to sell. It is not to celebrate sexuality. And so, so we're saying, hey, here are these, this, whatever, some commercials with a beautiful woman with a bikini on eating this big burger, whatever. Right. And then, yes. And then on the other spectrum, we're saying that, like you said, the church is saying that's sinful and your body is dirty. And of course that's confusing, because naturally inside of you, there's a deeper knowing that says, no, this is not the truth. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's the problem. And yes, they are objectifying women and also men.
Sure.
We look at those men in the Calvin Klein underwear ad and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and they have
the bulging abs, the big pecs. We're being told this is what you should look like. This is how you should. Only beautiful people have access to a beautiful life, and it's a lie. It's not truth.
Yeah.
Right. And so that can really pull a number on you. It can create a lot of confusion, especially when a lot of time, those ads are catering to younger people, right? That's who they're selling to most of the time. Right. And so, and where they're starting to develop their own sexuality. So that's really, really confusing. And then, whatever education that they get or lack thereof around sexuality also is that's also another topic.
Yes. You are an advocate, I would say, for the empowerment of women. I noticed you mentioned, it's kind of a political thing. You mentioned the capitalism. So you do have a little bit of maybe a political or maybe a social cause to your place online. Would that be fair to say that?
Oh, yes, for sure. I mean, our sexuality is political, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If we look at politics, telling us who can have an abortion, who can't, they're using that to their advantage, to gain more power, to gain more popularity. For me, my cause here is, I took a course on prosperity, and our question that we had to contemplate the whole course was, how can I be of greatest service to the whole? Mm-hmm. And for me, if everyone is in tune and tapped into that their own nature and their innate wisdom of their sexuality, we will have a much better life on this planet. We will have more respect for nature and for the animals that live on the planet. We will have more respect and kindness towards each other, between the relationship between men, women, children of all genders. It would be completely different. And there are people on the planet right now who are working. I have studied with a particular group of people in Portugal. They're called Tamara, and they're a biotope. And they basically, since the 60s, have studied the relationship between men and women and the human being with the planet. And they are doing a lot of work to correct and to create a new world, a new human being. And the course I took was called Global Revolution and the Healing of Love. And they talk a lot about the sexuality and the things the deep wounds that we have around it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's coming from my own experience and having my own wounds. And I've spent about the last 5 years healing that and integrating those parts inside of me. I think that I want to share that with everyone. I want to create that space where people can start to talk about this and really get comfortable. Because I think that, again, my vision is for a more peaceful planet, a more peaceful relationship between each other, between people.
Sure. I hear what you're saying too, in regard to the woman's body issue, talking about politics. And the only thing I'll make a comment about this. I know that the subject of abortion can be a very hot button issue for a lot of people, and I don't want to dissect a lot of it. But the one thing that concerns me about it, and I don't hear either quote unquote side, because we always have two sides now. There's never nothing in between. We can't discuss nuance. There has to be either for me or against me. That's the way we're set up now. But what does concern me, if the extreme pro-life people get their way, what I am concerned about, I believe that every woman listening to this, and I want to be very clear, whether you are pro-choice, pro-life, whatever your stance is, hear me out on this point. This is my concern. I suppose every woman that's out there to some degree has had a problem with some sort of a man with unwanted advances, or in particular with exes, an ex-boyfriend or an ex-husband that just doesn't get it, that the relationship's over. This can be very frightening. And a lot of times this can be an issue where you don't get a whole lot of help from the authorities until something really drastic happens. So what concerns me is I'm afraid that if the extreme pro-life movement gets its way, they're going to arm a certain segment of society with the notion that if I rape my wife or my girlfriend, and I get her pregnant, a judge is going to tell her she has to have that baby. And that's going to forever intertwine our destinies. And it's not that far out. It's already happened where rapists have sued for support. That's already has happened.
Wow.
So my concern would be is if the extreme gets their way, it's going to be to the point where if a woman gets raped by her father, she gets pregnant, and the pregnancy will endanger her life, she still does not get the option of an abortion under these no exceptions rules. And that to me is that's frightening. I don't want women to be in that situation. is what I just said. How do you react to that? Do you agree with a lot of that, or what's your take on that?
Of course, again, it goes back to the point I was making that we're constantly trying to manipulate nature. Women have had access to plant medicine and have been able to give themselves their own abortions. Mm-hmm. Way before any of the medical system came into place. Yes. Right. And again, this just goes to show again that the medical system is part of the patriarchy, and they're always trying to take ownership over a woman's body and her autonomy. Right. Yes. And that's not okay. Yeah. It's not okay. Yeah. And this is why I'm doing this work, right? Is to unravel these stories. Even a woman giving birth, it is a natural thing. Yeah. The medical system does not need to be involved, actually. We have been giving birth. Women's bodies are meant to give birth. Mm-hmm. We don't need the medical system for it. Yeah. We used to have midwives. We used to birth together as women, right? That's true. And so this is the political issue, right? In our sexuality. Again, the politics is invading our nature as women.
That's a good point. That's something that here again from the aspect of someone who is very much in tune to that side of their essence, so to speak. I always like to get their opinions, and just to let the audience know. For example, me personally, I don't clearly land, and always. Anytime I do a show like this, there's going to be people listening to the podcast that have never listened to me before. And I don't really have a political leaning. I believe that ideology is one of the big problems that we have in our society. And I believe that when it comes to women and the issue of pregnancy, regardless of my opinion about abortion in and of and by itself, to make that determination and to legislate it, you have to reach into the dominion of a woman's body. You have to get inside.
That is correct.
And there just isn't that, like, for example, something as relatively benign as birth control, like a rubber or something, that's often referred to as a sin. Okay, to use something like that as a sin. I've never heard a man getting a vasectomy as being a sinful thing. Never. Okay. It seems like that language is more associated with the female body than it is. Okay.
But I also want to touch base a little bit on that too with the men. Don't want to leave the men out. Sure. If we look at circumcision, yes, we're not worried about circumcising our male, our boys. Yes. And yet we're in uproar when in Africa, there's women who are getting circumcised. Right. So do you see that? Yeah. So men too are being, are part of that. They are also being dominated and that child does not have a choice to not get that circumcision, and it's also a form of taking away their sovereignty. Yes, right. I've heard that discussed more though. That is coming up more. That's a lot of people are referring to it as some sort of mutilation, which I suppose it is. If it's a mutilation for women in Africa, it is also a mutilation for boys here in North America. Yeah. It is a mutilation of the body. Yes. The body is the child, the male child is born with that foreskin for a reason. Yes. It is there for a reason. And it was removed. It's a religious, is it not a religious thing? Yes. That's where it started. I've heard it described as a hygiene issue as well. I don't know how true that is. And it's not. It actually keeps the penis very hygienic. Okay. So that's a lie. It's not a truth. Yes. And here
I admire your objectivity here. You are a proponent of all genders. You want everyone to have their sovereignty.
All human beings have a right to that. If you are transgender, if you are gender fluid, it doesn't matter. That is how you were born. That is your nature. Who are we to say that this is not natural? If it is born that way, it is natural. Nature has created that person that way.
Yes. I'll ask you this about the type of stimulation that a lot of people go for. Mm-hmm. There's a component of this, let's say erotica. Okay, erotica has been around in different forms of art as long as art has been around. Okay, there's a sexual depictions in caves. Okay, so there's an erotica component. There's something where, like you said, it's a life force. It's part of beauty. It's a natural thing. There's part of what we might call an erotica genre of art, not only in terms of what you paint, but pictures and so on. Mm-hmm. But then there is what a lot of people describe as porn. Mm-hmm. Okay. And to me, porn would be more graphic. And a lot of times it can be a very unhealthy depiction of sex. It can give people false impressions of what the male ideal is like. A lot of men think that their penis is too small because they've been watching men who have exaggerated proportions. Mm-hmm. And same goes for the women. You know, the idea that you have to have a perfect body and you have to look good, and they don't realize all the shots and all the lighting and everything that makes those things look the way they do, the airbrushing and everything else. The bleaching. Oh, yes. And that's a new one. Never.
Bleaching of the butthole. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And you have to have everything has to have the same skin tone all the way around the body. Mm-hmm. So there's that unhealthy stimulant there. But I would say this too. When I was young, I remember one time I was in the 6th or 7th grade, and I was forced to work a paper drive, and we were taking, unloading cars and throwing them in the truck, and we found some magazines. I don't remember if they were Playboy or what they were. And this was a big deal. We're going through it. We're in 7th or 8th grade, and we're checking out all these pictures. You can, in the palm of your hand now, watch a woman having sex, maybe unwillingly, with 3 or 4 people being 10 years old.
Mm-hmm. I know.
I can't believe that, as much as I would like to believe that I had my act together at that age, that would have been hard for me to consume and find a place for when I didn't even understand the basics of intercourse or anything. Mm-hmm. I can't believe that those things aren't harmful. Do you want to talk a little bit about what is a good stimulant and what is a stimulant you should stay away from?
So for me, a good stimulant would be knowing my body and knowing what my body likes. So children naturally know that. Right? Children grow up knowing, they touch everything. They put things in their mouths. They're very physical beings, right? And so anything that I have pleasure with is good stimulant, right? Mm-hmm. And with going back to porn, porn is not a natural and real depiction of having sex. Right. So, how do, and again, it's like, it's again, going back to having conversations with each other. It's, as parents, how are we showing affection in front of our children, of, tenderness, holding each other, holding hands, exchanging tender words. This is how we teach children about sexuality and love and pleasure. You have to know yourself. You have to really know yourself. You have to know your body. know what touch you enjoy, what scent smells that you like, what foods you enjoy. These are all part of that. What I would consider something a negative. What was the question again? How did you word it?
How I phrased it was, what would be a healthy stimulant? Like, for example, something like an erotic story, a steamy.
Right.
That would be, but on the other hand, when you're watching these just wild sex, pornographic things where people are just doing stunts and sometimes they're violent.
Right.
So you have this. How do you keep yourself in line and say, this is not a healthy stimulant for me? I need to move to something. Yeah.
There are people out there who are creating new content. There's a woman who created a website called Make Love Not Porn, where she invites regular, normal, everyday to day people of all shapes and sizes to film themselves making love and having sex. And then it gets posted on her website, and people subscribe to her website. And that's a more realistic sense of pleasure, right? And it's slow. There's a lot of tenderness. There's kindness, kind words exchanged. And unfortunately, it's a paid service. So, I find it very fascinating that we're in a place where we're on the internet, where people are being gaslit, and we're in a place where people are controlling what's being allowed on the internet, and yet they do not have a special place for porn to be only accessed by a different type of internet, just for adults, that children would not have access to or would not have the knowledge. Why is that?
Yeah.
What is going on there that you can access porn for free?
Yes. Why? And like I said, it's not just snippets of stuff, but I mean, there's
it's like hardcore, a lot of violence, a lot of, raping and scenes of women being used in a way that is not really loving and giving.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yes. You have a lot of, like I said, in your wheelhouse in terms of being a champion of love, sexuality, intimacy, and where you're on Twitter. And, here again, I'll tell the audience, you pronounce your name M, but it looks like Emmy. It's EMME. Your Twitter handle is at EMME_Fox, FOX.
That's correct.
Let's talk a little bit about your Twitter. What do you feel? I know that you've showcased some different things besides feeling good about your the energy of the sexuality that you exude, but you also you did a thing on there where you were shooting at a shooting range.
Oh yeah, yes. That was with my son.
And you have things where you're out on the beach, so there's a lot of content there, and I feel it's very positive. I would say that there's some of it is there's nudity involved for someone who just to keep them aware. But what would you say is the tone of your Twitter account? What do you try to get across in your social media?
I think for me, it's about embracing myself. It's also, that the things that I put out, the nudity, and there's a part of me that is pushing up against some of those boundaries and those stories around nudity. My parents are from France, and so in Europe, they're way more open about.
Oh, sure.
They've had nudity in movies way before we did.
Yeah.
Way before we did in the West. And to them, sexuality is very natural. There's not there. It's not It's not something that needs to be is to be ashamed. Are there parts of Europe, yes, that are still very much that also have issues with sexuality? Absolutely. So for me, it's a way to say, hey, you know, it's okay. We all have naked bodies, and they're beautiful, and they come in all shapes and sizes and age difference as well. And to really be comfortable with that. My kids know I'm on Twitter. My daughter has, actually, she started following me on Twitter as well. And we have some really great conversations. She would like to be this comfortable in her own body, you know, and for me, to be this way is to show her and to be that example for other people that it's okay. Yeah. I don't post anything of me having sex. Right. I find that's more of that's very intimate. Yeah. Thing, you know, and it's not something I want to, that's not what my Twitter feed is about. It's about fully accepting yourself, fully accepting your sexuality, and living a really free and sovereign life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have recently gone into the Twitter Spaces arena, and I won't spend a lot of time on that if the audience don't know what that is. In very short, a brief explanation, it's an audio space where you have a host, and you may have a few guest speakers, and then, of course, as many people that want to join can listen in. It's kind of like just an audio space where different subjects are covered. You have gone into that, and one of your recent topics was one of the things that is often joked about, but sometimes it's not funny, but it's the idea of men sending explicit pictures to women unsolicited. For example, you accept someone into your, follow situation on a social media account, and the next thing you know, you get this direct message, and what's commonly referred to as a dick pic is there. And I heard you say that that's really no different when it's unsolicited. That's no different than being a flasher, walking up to someone and showing them something you don't know if they want to see. Yeah. What's some of the nuance when you conducted that space? What were some of the things that were said that kind of surprised you? Well, I had created a survey, in regards to that, because everyone's always like, why do guys do that? Like, it's always the question, And so for me, then I'm curious. I want to know. And so I put out that survey, and I asked men to message me, not divulge their name, but to say, okay, if you've ever sent one, what was your motives and what was it really about? And I was surprised. I had a lot of men, So I had 18 men who were very upfront and honest with me in regards to that and the purpose behind them sending the dick pic. And by all means, I'm not excusing them of that behavior. However, there's always something underlying that behavior that is this deep human need, right? Every time we have a certain behavior, underneath that, there's a need that is not being met. Yeah. And the men, what they wanted to be seen and accepted and embraced. And I guess for them, one gentleman who I think it was in the chat where the gentleman made mention of how in nature, the male animal is usually the one that's most vibrant. Yeah. Right, that has the plumage and the color, and there's something that they offer the female part to attract her to him. But in the human realm, we kind of don't have that. Yeah. And then, right, it's usually the woman. I'm wearing bangles, I have my earrings, I've got makeup on. I'm the one attracting the man, so it's a little different. And so I guess for the men, it's this way they go, oh, well, maybe if I show her my dick, they might want to have an exchange with me and be impressed by the way it looks or that sort of thing. So that was very interesting. And it's also a very vulnerable share, because it's them saying, we just want to be seen and accepted, you know? And I feel that a lot of men, I think, due to the patriarchal, what's going on and how much women have been affected by it, they're very guarded and angry, right? I call that this, you know, I have a teacher that calls that the sacred rage. And so rightfully so, that anger is there, but unfortunately the men are the brunt of that anger. And so I think men don't know how to dance. They don't know how to deal with that and what to do with that. And so we're at a very delicate point right now between men and women, is how do we create a space where we can have these conversations, where we can be vulnerable with each other. And fortunately, I put the survey to the women, and I did not get any answers. No, I think I had 2 women message me in my DM. So I had to change my tactic. And instead I did an anonymous poll. And based on that poll, because we also have to look at women, we're not that innocent either.
Sure.
Right. There was 30 women who answered the poll, and 90% of those women have sent unsolicited nudes to men.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
90%.
Wow.
I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to correct my behavior, because I have an assumption that a man wants to see that.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving them consent. I'm not allowing them to say to me yes or no. It goes both ways. Yeah. Right? We have to look at both of our behaviors, both men and women. And it was actually the first time I did it was with a friend of mine. We had in the past exchanged nudes, and one day I hadn't talked to him in a while, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then I kind of sent him a nude to be flirty with him, and then he messaged back, and he's like, "Oh, just so you know, I have a girlfriend now." You know, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And it was in that moment that I realized that also pertains to me as a woman. I need to ask permission. Yeah. I shouldn't assume that a man wants to see me naked. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Well, here again, getting back to your objectivity and how you equally apply is very impressive to me, because generally you don't get that in today's world. It's from my perspective and not yours. And you do a real good job in all of your content of that. And I would tell our audience, if they want to follow you or follow some of your content, you do a real good job of being very humanistic in this approach to what we get our sexual pleasure from. And, here again, you could have very easily gone into the men are pigs routine with the dick pics and all that, and you didn't. That was very, very professional, very well spoken. So I really admire your content from that perspective. Following you on Twitter, again, for the audience, you are at EMME_FOX. And that's M Fox. That's how you prefer it to be pronounced. And as a positive, I really want to thank you for being on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have this real interesting energy about you. You have, it's not like when I was explaining to some people that I was doing this type of interview with you, and a lot of them have interviewed like the girls that do the 900 numbers and all that. I said, no, this isn't going to be that. This is something different. And it was, I got to say, one of my most unique. I wasn't exactly sure how this was going to go. I was a little nervous, because I don't normally do a lot of this type of content. But I'll before we leave, I'll tell you this one story about nudes. This was before I was married. I've been married a little while. I got actually married when I was 49. Okay, so I got married late in life. That was my first marriage, and I always joke it's because I didn't want till death do us part to take as long. That's the joke. but years ago when I was younger, I met this girl online. I didn't actually meet her, but we started talking online. And then you know how those things progress. You exchange phone numbers and then on down the line. And one night I was laying in bed and I heard my notification come in for a text. I heard this ping. So I opened it up and she showed me a picture of her chest. Now I hadn't met her yet. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure how to react because in this day and age, if I text her back something, something graphic or something, and she gets offended, and the next thing you know, I'm digging myself out of a hole. So I was kind of inexperienced in terms of how I should handle this, and everybody agrees I really messed this up. But I said, that's nice. Well, the next day, I get this email from her, and here again, this is in the wake of the "that's nice" comment. I get this email from her saying, I don't know how it is that I always meet these guys that don't know they're gay. And she goes down this whole and not that there would be anything wrong with that, but in her estimation was I didn't react properly to that picture, so therefore I must be having some issues. I must be confused. Which here again is a conclusion that a lot of times men do feel forced to react a certain way. When you say about that. Yeah, sure.
And then also that she had an underlying desire or need to have you compliment her breasts.
Yes, absolutely.
But you didn't give that to her, and so that's why she reacted that way. So see, this is how she was relating to you.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly right.
As opposed to simply respecting you and saying, "Hey, I would love to send you this photo." And then starting a conversation and offering you an opportunity to either say yes or no, or to negotiate.
Exactly. Sure. I'll give it some context as opposed to just flying into my phone.
At night. And that's right. And why is it okay for her to send you that nude and expect you to say all these wonderful things? But when a man sends a dick pic, then we're saying that's gross. That's this, it's that. And I do know some women enjoy receiving dick pics. So we're aware of that as well. There is that, but that's usually the conversation. What would happen if you had said to her, "Oh, that's gross. Mm-hmm. That's disgusting.
Yeah,
you're disgusting." Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we don't say that. We don't say that to women.
No, correct. You're right.
But we do say that to men.
Yes. That's interesting point. That's something to consider. And that's one thing I really enjoy about your content. It's you often can flip the tables and give somebody something to consider that they might have not have considered before.
It's all about respect and kindness and coming from a place from our heart, right? That's what this is about.
Yes. Right. That's a great message. I was going to ask you for a closing comment, but that's it right there.
That's it. That's the message. That is my message on Twitter.
Yes. Fantastic. Em, I really want to thank you very much for coming on.
Aww.
You were very
kind.
Thank you. Yes, you were very kind and gracious, and didn't pin me in a corner.
No.
So
that's good.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I hope you feel I handled it well. We've been talking to Emme Fox. And again, it looks like Emme, EMME_FOX on Twitter. Do check her out. Like I said, a very humanistic approach to our love, sexuality, intimacy, all those things. Excuse me. Thank you so much. I almost said it. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Billy. And thank you for being such a great supporter, too, on Twitter for me. It's been wonderful.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, Em. All right. I'm Billy Dees. Just a reminder, you can follow me on Twitter as well. That's kind of like my social media home at Billy Dees. There are links in my Twitter bio to all the other places we are online. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast on all the major platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, on down the line. And of course, like I said, Good Pods is really a good place to check out independent creators. So if you haven't yet, give that app a chance. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Billy Dees, and until next week, I'll talk to you then. Thank you very much. Well, hello, everyone. I am Billy Dees from the self-titled Billy Dees Podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.